One in five suffer.
Erase the stigma.
Brain difference is not a crime.
Mental health isn't just your problem.
It's our problem.
And now, Mental Health Monday with Marla and Dave.
Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. As usual, no matter what Monday you tune in, I'm always Marla.
Yes, and I'm still Dave. And as usual, this is Mental Health Mondays, and we are so glad you guys are here. We're going to have an awesome show for you today.
At the top of the show, we always want to remind you that Mental Health Monday is brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
And we've just started a new GoFundMe page for Mental Health Mondays, specifically to help us continue to bring this show to you and share with you all of the information, the education, the joys, the testimonials.
Stories.
Yes, the stories, the special guests. And speaking of special guests, arriving in the public eye via MTV's hit TV show Teen Mom 2, our guest today, Kailyn Lowry, quickly became one of America's favorite young moms. Kail is now a mother of three.
Four.
A mother of four, excuse me.
You can't blink on her. Don't blink.
A New York Times best-selling book author, a television personality, a parenting blogger, and a social media influencer with over 8 million combined followers.
Wow.
I don't know how she does it all. She runs a website under her name, KailLowry.com, focused on DIY, cooking, gifting, kids, and more relevant topics. Our guest today is none other than Kail Lowry from Teen Mom 2. And when we come back, we are going to have an awesome show and great conversation with Kail. See you on the other side.
Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something.
Welcome back.
Yes.
I have to just say this. I'm a little astonished. How in the hell did you even have time to get pregnant at all? Because that's Dave, I was like, wait, what? Like, that's a lot. I think I'm just the Energizer Bunny. But Kail, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
You have so much to share.
Absolutely.
And so much to talk about, and we're glad you could join us.
Because we know we have to be interrupting something with that gigantic list of all the things that you do, much less being a mother.
No, I think it just sounds better than it actually is. You know what I mean? Like, when you read it all, it sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's just part of every day.
Well, I'm the one who's connected to social media, so it doesn't just sound like that. It is that. I watch. So I see what you're doing. And by the way, hats off to you. It really, on a serious level. Now, you do. I have to tell you because, I got to know you through Moniz.
Yeah.
And I looked up and you had 3 beautiful little boys. And then I said, wait, I looked at I was looking at her Instagram and I said, is that a baby? Is that her baby? And before I could even text her or send a message, I started scrolling back through her page because I just wanted to find evidence of her pregnant. Check the timeline, check the stamp. So you have a new arrival.
Well, congratulations, by the way.
Congrats for sure. So 4 little boys.
All boys, yeah. Creed is 3 months old, and he is by far the most difficult one.
Wow.
At 3 months?
Oh my God, he's so difficult.
Really?
Yeah, it's been very it's been a roller coaster over here.
Well, sounds like he's going to be a very important person coming up in the future.
That's the way it always works. It doesn't feel like that when you can't get any sleep. But once you finally get some rest, you're like, whoa, I have the genius child.
Well, we want to let everybody know, and thank you again, Kail, for joining us, that this conversation is really going to be a 2-part show. We'll continue the conversation, and we're going to break this up over 2 different shows. But I probably
want to go back.
And so, first of all, in this first show, we're going to focus a little bit more on you, Kail, your background, how you grew up, how that impacted you, as a teenager, and then we'll get more on the next show into your professional life. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So take us all the way back. Tell us how it began for you, how you grew up, the environment.
She said, how far back?
As far back as you want to go.
As far back as I want to know, I can take you to a point.
Ooh.
Okay.
The point that I would like to start at is your first impactful understanding of Kail. Like, when did you have a realization of who you were as a human?
I don't even know. I mean, I feel like if I answered this question prior to being in therapy for a year, it would be very different. I know that I started having questions about myself and being what I felt like was different when I was around 12. My friends that I was around and the people that my mom, had me around, they all had both of their parents. I already had one parent that was an addict and one parent that was just not present. So I think then was like when I was starting to really question who I was, not really realizing who I was, if that makes sense.
Got it. So that part of your childhood, again, I understand that very well. I mean, in other words, I will say this to our audience, and I'm glad you brought that up, answering the question post working on yourself and doing things that put you in therapy, put you in a very different place.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So for you getting there, and I kind of want to just mirror you now being a mother, which we all know, David and I want to jump in and confirm that when you have your first baby, I don't care who you are, even us as parents, it's a learning curve, period.
Absolutely. No parent starts off a pro.
And so I know one of the most impactful moments for me was when I had Moniece. It actually made my relationship initially with my mom worse because I had this new little person and I couldn't, it shined a light on some of the things that were probably more disconnected and more selfish that I considered to be norm that were no longer normal for me. Like, how could you just... You did this when I was 14, you left? I mean, I understood it differently. So now what I want to ask you is mirroring the mother of 4 and now being a mom and then looking back at 12-year-old, 13, 14-year-old Kail, how do you pull those two things together in how you parent your sons?
I mean, I definitely have a different perspective now as a mom. I can see, even at my mom's worst, she was doing her best. And she was trying to make the best decisions and maybe they weren't the best decisions, but in the moment, that's what she thought was best. And so that's kind of where I'm at now with being conscious of that and knowing that moving forward in my own motherhood is like, okay, at the end of the day, I don't know if the decision I make here and now is going to be the best decision in the long run, but I know right here in the moment, this is the best decision, whatever that may be. So it definitely gives me perspective. I can't say that it makes it any easier.
Well, how did you feel about it as you were growing up? Looking back in retrospect, you can have the awareness that you have now that your mom, even though she had some issues, was doing her best. But how did that make you feel when you were a young person dealing with that?
Or do you even
before
recognize?
You had this new perspective?
When I was young, I was so angry. Like I couldn't understand, my mom's thought process. I couldn't understand why we were where we were. I just didn't get it. So now looking back, I realized, she was doing the best she could. So I'm not angry. I'm very much at peace about, what my mom did growing up for me. And I don't harbor any like resentment or anything like that anymore.
So is your mom, is your mom still in your life?
No, I haven't talked to my mom in years. I mean, she called me last year, but I haven't seen her in years.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we're just scratching the surface and this conversation is going to keep going. And when we come back from this next break, I want you to really get into when you first got your first diagnosis and how you dealt with that. And
what was the incident, I would like to know, that made her feel like I should search outside of myself for some answers?
Exactly.
We're going to answer that as soon as we come back. Don't move. Stay right there. We'll all be right back.
When Dave and Marla get together, it's hot.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
It's time for the Mental Health Minute with Marla and Dave.
Last week, we shared 10 of 31 things that you can do to boost your mental health in our effort to increase mental wellness. Today, we want to share 10 more tips.
Number 11, sometimes we don't need to add new activities to get more pleasure. We just need to soak up the joy in the ones we've already got. Trying to be optimistic doesn't mean ignoring the uglier sides of life. It just means focusing on the positive as much as possible. Number 12, feeling anxious? Take a trip down memory lane and do some coloring for about 20 minutes to help you clear your mind. Pick a design that's geometric and a little complicated for the best effect. Who knew? Number 13, take time to laugh. Hang out with a funny friend like me. Watch a comedy or check out cute videos online. Laughter helps reduce anxiety.
Number 14, go off the grid. Leave your smartphone at home for a day and disconnect from constant emails, alerts, and other interruptions. Spend time doing something fun with someone face to face. That would be in person, I would imagine. Dance around while you do your homework. Homework.
Housework.
Do your housework. I'm sorry. Not only will you get your chores done, but dancing reduces levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and increases endorphins, the body's feel-good chemicals. Go ahead and yawn. Studies suggest that yawning helps cool the brain and improves alertness and mental efficiency.
Wow. Number 17, relax in a warm bath at least once a week. Try adding Epsom salts to soothe aches and pains and help boost magnesium levels, which can be depleted by stress. And a side effect, you'll be clean. Number 18, has something been bothering you? Let it all out on paper. Writing about upsetting experiences can reduce symptoms of depression. Number 19, spend some time with a furry friend. Time with animals lowers the stress hormone cortisol and boosts oxytocin, which stimulates feelings of happiness. Henry David Thoreau said on number 20, what lies before us and what lies behind us are small matters compared to what lies within us. And you bring what is within you out into the world. Miracles happen when you do that. So the tip is to practice mindfulness by staying in the present.
Remember to be intentional about your mental wellness. Brought to you by NAMI San Fernando Valley and Loving Beyond Reason.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together,
It's like a match dancing with a firecracker.
All right. Now, I just want to remind everybody and bring Kail in on our little secret.
We have a secret?
On this show, diagnosis, when I brought that up as we were going to the break,
Yes.
A diagnosis for us is not a label of to who somebody is. It's really just a process by which we understand what type of help that you might need. That's how we deal with diagnosis.
That's super important for us to say that because
Absolutely.
you know no one should wear that as a badge, and that's part of breaking the stigma.
Absolutely.
So, right.
Absolutely. And so, Kail, I was noticing that in one of your books that you touched on that you were diagnosed with bipolar. And then subsequently you found out that might not be the case. A lot of times the titration process or even getting to the right diagnosis can take a long time.
We've experienced that personally.
And sometimes people go through several different diagnoses before they find the one that it seems to more explain the issues that they're dealing with and the help that they might need.
But I want you to tell us what was the indicator for you initially, your first indicator that you felt like I need to look outside myself for some answers. Was it an incident?
I mean, I don't know that it was one specific incident for me. I definitely think it was like an accumulation of things, and just my mom constantly saying that I had like these crazy mood swings and I was so out of control. And, one minute it was hot, one minute it was cold. it was just like a really trying time in my life. So I was like, there's definitely something wrong with me. Like I have to get this looked at. I have to figure this out. And so I was the one who sought help. Like I wanted to fix myself, right?
You wanted to feel better.
Yeah. So, and I was so young and confused. And I think that was really the peak of when people really started talking about mental health, or maybe it was, just the beginning of when I actually heard people talking about mental health and really heard the term bipolar disorder, things like that. And so, but after seeing a different doctor in California, actually, she was like, I don't think that you're bipolar. You don't have bipolar disorder at all.
So how old were you when you got that first diagnosis?
I want to say I was 14, something around
there.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
And so then how much later did you think that you got the correct diagnosis when you talked to the doctor in California?
Probably 3 years.
Wow.
Well, and I say it, oh, wow, and we're not doctors, but we have a lot of personal experience. And one of the things that we found out quickly was a lot of diagnoses that involve identifying certain mental health behaviors, you can't even get them until you're 18.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said, oh, wow. For somebody that may be very well why.
Right, and that's what the doctor in California said.
Yes.
She was like, you went through so much, and
Right.
there's just so much that you're harboring, and there's so much still going on that there was no real way to diagnose. But I think that that was part of my family's problem, was like, it was always looking for an answer or like a cure or a label to say, okay, this is
what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you go to the doctor and your baby's in pain and they're like, oh, it's just growing pains. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But there very well may be an underlying
problem
that
you just
but
haven't.
they're just
Yeah.
don't know the answer right away, so they're gonna just stick another label on it and call it a day.
Right. So Kail, and just remind us, because I'll be totally honest. Of course, we know of your show, but we were not watching the show when you first were on Teen Mom. How old were you when you had your first?
I got pregnant when I was 16, so I had him when I was 17.
Okay, so she was 16. So that diagnosis, that misdiagnosis came even 2 years before, which, and I need to say for our audience, and this is for parents, and I'm glad Kail is here. Just understand that there's a lot of chemical effect and things that are happening through puberty, which is why it is so difficult when your child goes from preteen to teen up through 21. Like even with schizophrenia, they say it's the condition of stolen lives, because you don't fracture until a particular point. So because there's a lot of things, there's the frontal lobe's not developed, things are still happening. So I want to say that to parents, because when things go wrong, people want to immediately say, I'm taking my 12-year-old, you look at you, you got an attitude, you got bipolar. No,
Yep.
They're 12. No, they're 13.
That's literally how it felt. I mean, at the time I thought it made sense, and I was like, okay, like I'm, this is what I have. This is, I have to accept it and learn how to cope and kind of figure it out on my own. But then as I got older, I was like, I'm not having these crazy mood swings. I'm not acting out. I don't have rage. I don't have, I don't have these ups and downs. I don't think that, I don't think this is accurate. And so when I was on the show, the doctors, they kind of had me go through this whole process, and then they, announced isn't the right word, but aired on TV that, it was a misdiagnosis. I almost felt like my gut instinct was right.
Well, hang in there, Kail. We're gonna come back. We're gonna keep turning the corner and talk about how these things have affected you and how you've come through it to get to a place where now your story is so public that it's actually helping and healing others. We'll be right back.
All right, that fun music lets us know it's time for the poll question break. Last week's poll question, we asked last week, according to Starting Point Behavioral Healthcare, which of these conditions are you most likely to develop? A, diabetes, B, cancer of any kind, C, mental illness, or D, heart disease. Kail, What do you think that answer would be? Of all the things in your life that somebody might come down with, would it be diabetes, cancer of any kind, mental illness, or heart disease? Which one of those are you most likely to have to deal with?
Mental illness.
Absolutely.
Ding, ding, ding. Even higher than diabetes, cancer of any kind, or heart disease. You are more likely to have to deal with mental illness than any of these conditions.
Do you think that was a cheat question? Because this is a Mental Health Monday, so the show would be mental illness. So
well, you still ask it in the form of a question.
I don't know.
Ding, 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 ding. Marla, what's the new poll question?
New poll question for next week. What percentage of U.S. adults suffer from anxiety disorders? A, 19%, B, 27%, or C, 34%?
Now, Kail, you want to make a guess on this one?
No.
Again, the question, what percentage of U.S. adults suffer from anxiety disorders? Would it be 19%, 27%, or 34%?
34.
34%.
Okay, we're going to find out next week if Kail is in the group of winners, because that's our next week's question. So head to any of our social media sites. The poll question will be there. Vote.
Yes, vote indeed.
And
you
your votes
have voted,
count.
and it did count.
We see that it works. Voting works.
And George, you might have to keep voting, but we appreciate you.
Don't vote more than twice. There'll be no runoff here.
We'll be back.
All right, we're back from the break. We want to remind everybody that by all means, head to our Mental Health Monday GoFundMe and make sure that you can make your contribution to keep this show going and doing what we're doing.
Wherever you're watching it right now, the link should be right below. Click the link. Help us out. Right quick now, Marla or Kail.
It's Kail.
Kail, I think you were telling us about how you got to the doctors, the television show, and
kind of sorted out a misdiagnosis.
And they helped you understand that your feeling was correct, that you might have been misdiagnosed because all of the things that you used to deal with, you were no longer dealing with that. Now, did it feel like a misdiagnosis, or did it feel like the therapies that you were prescribed were helping? Tell us about that.
I don't really think that anything that I was doing really, it wasn't working, right? Because I would take medication and then I would come off of it, and then after some time I would feel just like myself, like I didn't feel like I was out of control at all or having any types of like episodes or I don't know, mood swings or anything like that when I was off medication for long periods of time. And I don't really have, my mom has bipolar disorder, and I just very different. Very different.
So I have a quick question, because this is just an interesting sidebar. What does Kail's low look like? Like when you feel like you're out of sorts, what does that look like for you?
Now or when I was younger?
Period. Like, I mean, when Kail's not doing like it, I'll bring up a real. You were on live the other day, and I thought you looked beautiful, and you were like, "Oh, I hate what I'm looking like right now," and I was like, "Wow," because I was like, "That's such a pretty picture." So and that's just real. But I'm saying for you, you're in your own body, you're in your own head. What is it when you're off sorts? What does that look like for Kail?
I definitely think that around the time when I found out I was pregnant with my youngest son, it was a really, really hard time for me. And I think low for me is like, I do feel a little bit out of control, right? So like I need to clean all my countertops off, and I feel like I'm when I can't control certain things, I try to control what's around me.
OCD?
Yeah. So when I was telling my psychologist about this, she was like, I asked her, I was like, do I have BPD? Like what is going on? Like, tell me about myself, because I don't know what I'm doing and how to cope with these low moments of my life. And she did say it was like low level depression with OCD tendencies in coping. So those are my lows. That's like when I'm feeling out of control and I don't really know how to handle certain things. I try to control what I can around me. If that's like cleaning off my countertops or like getting everything out of my house, throwing away everything, becoming a minimalist for 6 months. But they're not the type of mood swings that I think were that I was having when I was going like in my adolescence.
Right.
So now, when you're dealing with those types of issues, how do they affect your day to day and your business life? I know we're going to talk more about that on next week's show, but how do you deal with that? What do you do when you know that something is coming on? How do you bring yourself back from those lows?
That's something I'm still working on right now. And my best friend is also my assistant, and this is something that she struggles with me, in our work, because I do have a really hard time kind of balancing and staying focused when I'm going through these things, because a lot of times it's like me changing my mind on huge decisions or like the business plan. And so right now that's something I'm still working on in therapy, and I've been in therapy for a little over a year, but we're just literally scratching the surface.
Wow.
So that's something that kind of is what is next on our like to get to sheet.
So you know what? A lot of times, I'm glad you brought that up, and you've mentioned it through every segment, the word therapy, and so many people steer away or are afraid of or just refuse to.
Yeah.
What do you talk to the audience about the importance that the role that therapy has played for Kail?
For me, it's more than just going and talking to somebody, right? Like therapy, there's actually, you have to face the music. You have to admit things that you don't want to admit. You have to dig deep into who you are and where you want to be, and kind of, basically show a side of yourself to somebody who doesn't really know you, but you have to be honest with this person so that they can help you work through these things and figure out why you feel the way you feel and how to get out of it, how to cope with it. And I think that a lot of people just like aren't ready for that type of commitment, because it's actual work. You don't just go and talk to somebody. It's actual work, going home and doing homework. Like, I literally have my notes in front of me. Every single therapy session, I take my own notes, which sounds probably crazy. But like when I'm going through something and I want to erase all my countertops and just like get everything off here, my therapist was like, no, you have to learn to kind of live with a little bit of clutter and like don't clear your countertops, right? So like that was a task that she gave me from Thursday to the next Thursday when I would see her. Like, I have to put this into place, right? Like, I have to apply what she's teaching me to my real life. And I think there's a stigma with therapy. It's like, oh, if you go to therapy, there's something wrong with you.
You're sick.
That's not true.
You're learning to work through issues just like everybody else.
Right.
So in our mental health minute, one of the things that came up was coloring from time to time, and I know one of your books that you've authored, that you've written, is actually an adult coloring book. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I started writing, my first book came out in 2014, and that was literally therapy. When I put things in that book, I haven't thought about a lot of things since.
Wow.
Literally, when I closed that book,
wow, that's a chapter of life.
Yeah, and it's, unless like you guys have asked me about it, it's things I don't think about anymore. So my second book is Hustle and Heart, and it was also therapy for me, and it was just one of those things where I was like, if anyone else is kind of going through this, like I wanted to, partner it with an adult coloring book, because I felt like it's perfect. It's great for anxiety. It's great for just like needing a mental break. I love it. So
well, I'm glad that we asked. Kail, we're going to come back and close this, and then we're going to talk about what you have going on, because it's worth hearing. We'll be right back.
Bad.
Worthless.
Don't trust them. They'll hurt you. You're worthless.
It's pointless.
When the pain of schizophrenia meets hope, everything can change. Help someone who is struggling by supporting the National Alliance on Mental Illness and be a part of the NAMI effect. Hope starts with you.
It's raw, real, and unfiltered.
Kail, one of the other things that was on our the suggestion was to travel, and you have always been my travel hero. So that's another thing that, literally, hats off, because I do admire the fact that you will pack up and take your kids and you will get away. And I know that has to have some healing properties.
Well, you've been an example of what they say, that creativity can definitely be cathartic. You show that in everything that you've strive to do throughout
Did you say
your life.
she strips? No, she doesn't.
No.
She
I don't do that.
She does not do that,
And
Dave.
I didn't say that. Excuse me. I said strive to do
It's Mental
throughout your
Health
life,
Monday.
both as a mom and as a professional. This conversation, again, I told you we were just scratching the surface, and we're going to turn the corner when we come back the next time with Kail and talk about her professional life, coffee combos, something that you do with your friend Chrissy Lindsay.
Her podcast.
Yes, exactly, your podcast and all those things.
And I want to talk about Kail's house. Anyway, it's a lot. She has a lot. So we'll be.
She's doing the most.
You'll hear more in the next episode that we have coming up with Kail. Stay tuned.